In 1973, John Mitchell and Martin Cooper demonstrated the first handheld mobile phone, Motorola Dynatac 8000X. It was a revolution back then. Just imagine for a moment, for the past 100 years since the invention of the telephone, it had to be connected with wires, and you could not take it with you anywhere. It wouldn't work unless it is plugged into all of these wires. The telephone itself was magic when Graham Bell invented it. How was it possible to talk to someone in another city through a piece of plastic connected to some wires? But Motorola Dynatac was just the beginning, because what was about to come couldn't be even imagined by the greatest minds of that time. The mobile revolution just began. It's 1989. Nokia reveals its first mobile phone, and it weighs almost a kilogram. Other players like IBM quickly jumped on board, and with the invention of the internet, mobile phones look like the future. Back then, computers were these giant machines with boxy screens that looked absolutely ugly. I guess Gen Z will never understand what we went through. In 1999, BlackBerry changed the industry by releasing a phone that supported email, and you could browse some internet. If you compare that with what your phone can do today, that sounds silly. The tiny smartphone that perfectly fits into your pocket is more powerful than 1,000 giant computers just 20 years ago. The question is, how did we go from this to this? It sounds easy when you look back, but back then it was as difficult as today predicting the future. When Johnny Ive presented the idea of touchscreen to Steve Jobs back in the 2000s, some of the senior Apple engineers doubted the technology, and it took Apple 4 years to make the technology work. That's why when Apple got into the phone business, their competitors like BlackBerry or Nokia couldn't immediately compete with Apple, since they did not have the technology that Apple did, and it took them years to build a touchscreen that's both practical and strong enough not to break up easily. But for the past 20 years, something else has been happening, something we did not plan. Something not even the world's biggest corporations knew was happening. In the last few years, we have collected more data than we did in entire human history, and that's because of the internet. Everything that is done through the internet is stored somewhere on the internet. When researching for this video, I wanted to take a look at what happened to my old emails when I created them back when Yahoo or Hotmail were popular. To my surprise, they are still active, but I no longer have access to them. But I went a little deeper, and I realized that I had dozens, if not hundreds, of different accounts across different websites. If you compile them together, you can create a virtual version of myself. For the past 2 decades that I have been using the internet, I have created a virtual identity. But it's not just me, but everyone else. In fact, those who are born in the last 10 or 15 years are growing with smartphones in their hands and literally creating a virtual identity right from the beginning. So the virtual reality isn't a far-fetched sci-fi idea, but it has been happening for over 2 decades. When we throw words like Metaverse or virtual or artificial reality, It sounds so futuristic that we might not be able to experience them within our lifetime. But the truth is that the revolution has been happening all along. Think about how much of what you do is happening in real life and how much of that is in the virtual world. At first thought, you might not realize anything unusual, but the average person spends 59 hours a week using the internet. That's around 8.5 hours a day. Over 1/3 of your time is spent in the virtual world. It might not feel like that because currently we are experiencing virtual reality through screens, and it doesn't feel like it's virtual reality. But there on the internet or the virtual world, you can be whoever you want, however you want. Through your Instagram, you can make yourself look like you are a successful entrepreneur, a doctor, or a traveler, even if you're not that person in reality. Ask yourself, does your life look like the impression your Instagram profile gives? Probably not. Think of Zoom calls. It is literally an experience where all of you get into this virtual world to have a chat while not getting out of your bed. We came to a point where we interact, entertain, date, learn, or even work in this virtual world. In 2020, Travis Scott conducted his first virtual concert where 12 million people attended. These numbers seem unreal because getting 12 million people into one place is physically unreal. That is an entire city like New York. People could fly, fight, get out of the planet while watching how a giant Travis Scott performs. YouTube is filled with videos of his concert as they experienced it. Travis earned $20 million out of this concert. Not bad. But he's not alone. Ariana Grande had her first virtual concert in August, and Justin Bieber is on the way to have one as well. Fortnite is a metaverse by itself. The only problem is that right now we are experiencing the metaverse through screens, but we're about to experience the metaverse in 3D. We already have Oculus, PlayStation VR, HTC Vive, Microsoft HoloLens. If you haven't tried them, they are really cool. Playing games in Oculus is a completely different experience, but it's not quite there. They're heavy, big, and uncomfortable, and there are limited things that you can do. But that's exactly how phones used to be back in the day. Remember the first phone? It took us almost 25 years to go from this to smartphones. So it's a matter of time before we have the VR headsets that are not heavy and comfortable. It seems like we need a much shorter period of time since we have the infrastructure in place. Just think for a moment what we can accomplish when VR headsets will be as comfortable as smartphones are today. However, there is another question. Whose metaverse are we going to use? Everyone seems to be building his own metaverse. Facebook changed its name to Meta and is trying to create its version of the metaverse. Microsoft, Fortnite, Nvidia are all creating their versions of the metaverse. So, which one are we going to use? Back in the days when internet just emerged, it wasn't the way it is today. You couldn't just Google stuff to find them out. The only way you could access a website is by finding out the name of that website through someone or something. But today, the internet has improved to the point where we can Google stuff, download apps, and interact through social media. And Metaverse is on the way to be there. We have crypto as the virtual currency, NFTs as virtual ownership, and blockchain to decentralize everything. People might still doubt this virtual world, especially when it comes to virtual currencies. At the end of the day, it all comes down to what we give value. When you think of the US dollar, for example, what is it backed by? Nothing except our faith in it. In the past, currencies had to be backed by gold or a commodity, but that has changed since 1971. As long as people collectively believe that this piece of paper is worth this much, it is going to worth that much. We believe that the government is going to enforce this currency, but when it comes to cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin for example, our faith in it derives from the fact that it's a decentralized system that we all can keep track of. In other words, we give value to anything as long as we all decide to do it collectively, even if it's a piece of paper with some numbers and pictures on it. Most of what I said sounds a bit too futuristic, but we already have virtual influencers. This is Lil Makila. She has 3.1 million followers on Instagram. She creates content, promotes sponsored products like we do sometimes. The only difference is that she doesn't exist in real life. But people don't seem to care. They like her pictures, comment, and follow her. In the next 5 years, more and more companies are going to present their VR headsets. In fact, I believe Apple's next big thing is going to be a VR headset. For the last few years, Apple has filed multiple patents that prove that they are working on such a technology. If they can do with VR headsets what they could do with smartphones and smartwatches, it is going to revolutionize the entire industry. But until that happens, you can virtually learn how the stock market works by checking out my course on Skillshare that you can get for free using the link in the description, and 2 free stocks from Weibo.